Harsha Varlani. Let's start very quickly. The table of contents for today would be, we would be covering why do we need to communicate, what exactly is communication, your goals of communication, types of communication, barriers to communication, qualities of a good communicator, styles in communication. This is going to be this first session. Through your second session, we will be taking you through grammar basics, parts of speech, articles and prepositions, run-on sentences, tenses, etc. In sentences particularly, we will be going through what exactly are the components of a sentence, what do we mean by sentence fragments, how do we fix sentence fragments and sentence clarity. Very quickly getting into why do we need to communicate. A lot of us know that we want to communicate because we want to achieve shared understanding. Okay, we want direct flow of information. Okay, we want to help people overcome barriers to open discussions. Okay, it stimulates others to take actions to achieve or get goals. It channels information to encourage people to think in new ways and act more effectively. It's very important for us to realize why exactly we need to communicate. So, after understanding why do we need to communicate, how do we actually understand what is communication? We may say we have an idea that you need to communicate and a message is sent to a receiver, either verbally, non-verbally or written. The receiver then translates the words or the non-verbal gestures into a concept or information. Okay. Let us try and define exactly what is communication. Communication does not mean that we are just talking, one person is continuously talking and the other person is just listening on the other side. Okay. Communication is a process of passing information and understanding from one person to another. So, how do we understand from one person to another? It always has to be a two-way process. That is when we call it communication. Okay, we can also say communication is a set of skills that enables a person to convey information so that it is received and understood. Okay, please note the important words out here. It has to be received and understood. Let us look at an appropriate complete definition then for communication. Communication, we can say, is an exchange of facts, ideas, opinions or emotions between two or more persons to create a common ground of understanding. Okay, so here what are we doing in communication? It is an exchange of, it could be an idea, it could be a fact, it could be an emotion where I am angry, so I am just communicating my emotion to you. It has to be between two or more people. One person talking is not a communication. Communication is always two ways. Also, we need to create a common ground of understanding. What do we mean by a common ground of understanding? That means what I am saying is exactly what you have to understand or what you understand, which brings us to on the same page. That is what ensures that communication is actually effective. Looking at what are the main goals of communication, as in the four main goals of communication. Why do I communicate? Okay. The first reason that I might want to communicate is because I want to inform you about something. Okay. You want to inform, you are providing information for the use in decision making. Okay. But aren't necessarily advocating the course of the decision yourself. Okay. You want to request for something, to request for a specific action by the receiver. Okay. You want to persuade someone to reinforce or change the receiver's belief about a topic and possibility to act on that belief, or you want to just build relationship. Some messages you send may have the simple goal of building goodwill between you and the receiver. Let us take a very simple example for this. A group of friends, someone asks you, let us go for a movie. That is requesting. So, I am communicating with you with the intention, my goal is a request. You inform the person, your friend, saying, no, I have already seen that movie. So, you are providing them with information. The third type could be Persuading, when your friend tells you again, no, it's okay, let's any which ways go for the movie, it's a nice movie, now you're going with us, this is persuading. Okay, that is a third form of communication. The fourth type is just building relationships where you say, okay, let's just leave the movie, we'll all go to a coffee shop. So these are the four main goals of communicating. When you start or when you have an idea that you want to communicate, the first thing you need to figure out is what is the goal of communicating? Why am I communicating? Do I just need to inform the person about something? Do I need to request them for something? Do I need to persuade the person? Or is it just a relationship building based communication? Only then will your communication actually be effective, when you know the end result or the end goal of your communication. I am stressing a lot on this point because most of us, when we start communicating, we might have the intention of just informing the person, however it becomes a request, or we might move into a persuasion mode or even a relationship building mode. So it's very important for us to realize what exactly is our goal. Why am I communicating? Effective communication is always called effective when I realize what I am going to communicate and I stick to that. When my goals are clear in my mind is when my communication comes out a lot more effectively, hence the person on the receiving end actually understands what I am saying. Otherwise, there will be a lot of confusion on the receiver's end. The three basic elements of communication: we have oral communication, which is verbal, we have written communication, and we have non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication involves a lot of your body language, okay? It involves a lot of your facial expressions. Oral communication involves a lot of the words that you use, and it also involves the tone that you use while you are talking. It's very important, it's very important that your oral communication and your body language do not conflict each other while you're communicating. For example, if I say, I'm happy, do I look happy? My verbal communication is saying happy. However, my body language is not saying happy. If I stand like this and say, I am happy, I'm not actually happy. So this is a conflicting message. Therefore, your three elements need to sync very well with each other while you're communicating. The other forms of communication as mentioned are verbal, non-verbal, written, computer-based, audio-based, audio-visual, even silence is communication. For example, if you ask someone for permission, may I leave early today? Your supervisor just looks at you. That could be no. Hence, please note that silence is also considered communication. Under verbal communication, we have different forms. You have oral, like as I mentioned, face-to-face communication. You have telephonic communication. You have interviewing someone. You have public speaking. Under verbal communication, again, you have written, you have informal written communication, you have semi-formal written communication, and you have formal. Under non-verbal, very important again, you have body language, which consists of your facial expressions as well as the gestures that you use. Computer based communication could be emails, it could be internet, it could be video conferencing, it could be faxes sent out. Under audio communication, you have phone, telephonic, you have audio tapes, you have CD. Under audio visual communication, you have television, you have video conferencing. Meetings are also considered audio visual communication because you can hear as well as look at the person, and you have one-on-ones as well. One-on-one meetings is also considered audio visual. So, the other questions that actually come to our mind, now we have understood what exactly is communication. Communication is a two-way process. Yes, it involves more than one person. You cannot just keep talking yourself and the other person listening. That might not be considered communication. Okay, we understand why we need to communicate. All right, we understand what are the four main goals of communication. But then there are quite a few other questions that come to our mind when we are actually talking about communication. For example, how does one talk so that the other person listens and understands? It's very important for us to realize that when we are talking, the other person is listening to us. A lot of times we are sitting through a lecture and we just lost. That's because the other person is not really listening to us. Okay, so how do we know that the other person is listening to us? How does one listen? If communication is a two-way process, you can't really speak, accept the fact that the other person is listening to you, okay, but you're not too sure that the other person has understood you well. Hence, to be able to ensure that the other person has understood you well, you need feedback. When the person is giving you feedback or is actually reassuring what they have understood, you need to listen to them. So, how does one listen? How do I listen to become a good communicator? How does one know if he has been heard and understood? Three very important questions. These questions will be blogged as well. So, please get on to eMentor after this and start blogging. You will have answers to these questions on eMentor. Another very important aspect is the process of communication. How actually communication takes place. If you go to page number 12 on the material that has been provided to all of you, you have a very detailed explanation of the process where you have the message. The message comes to the sender's mind. I am the sender. I have a message, right? Then you have a receiver, which could be the other person or people. You have you encode that particular message, okay. Then you have a channel of communication, which could be the other channels that we have just mentioned. You have on the other side someone who will decode the message, who understands the signals that you have given, etc., etc. That's called your decoding. It's exactly the opposite of encoding. And then you have feedback. Feedback is when the receiver tells you or explains to you or summarizes what he or she has understood about what you have said. Therefore, you know that okay, I have spoken about something, I have communicated something, and the receiver has understood it as I meant it to be. In case that has not happened, you have to verify, you have to clarify what has not gone through correctly the first time. When we come to the essential qualities of effective communication, let's look at what we actually need to do to achieve those three questions. Know your audience. Match your message to the audience. It is very, very important that you know who you are talking to. For example, if I am a lawyer and I am speaking to a group of lawyers and I use a lot of legal jargon or legal terminology, they will understand what I am talking about. However, if I am a lawyer and I am addressing a bunch of people who are non-lawyers and I use a lot of legal terms, they might not actually understand what I am saying. So, it is very important that I know who my audience is, who I am talking to. Once I know who my audience is, then I match my message to the audience. Respect your audience and suspend judgments. For example, if someone does not understand what you are saying, it does not matter. You can explain it again. Don't assume that the person does not know anything. That is not true. Okay? So, when you are speaking to someone, please respect that person. It is very important to respect your audience and don't judge them. Know exactly what you want to achieve. The third point. What do I want to achieve? For example, when we spoke about goals of communication, right? You have the 4 main goals. Know exactly which one of those 4 goals you want to achieve. Once you know exactly what you want to achieve, automatically your communication gets that much more effective. First think, then organize those thoughts. After you organize those thoughts, then you proceed. Be mindful of what your face and body are conveying non-verbally. As I mentioned earlier, if I am standing strict at attention with a very serious face and I say, I am happy, it does not mean that I am happy. Okay, so, it is very important that your face and body, your non-verbal communication is in sync with your verbal communication. A few other pointers, please listen carefully. It is very important that as a communicator, it is not necessary that you are always talking. There is also a concept of listening. That is how it makes communication a proper two-way process. Okay? Be willing to share what you know and hear what you don't know. It is okay if you don't know something, you can get that information from the person you are talking to. Stay focused on what you want to achieve, don't get distracted. While communicating, a lot of us have a habit of getting distracted. For example, if I am talking and there is a loud crash on the other side, immediately we turn away. Hence, we get distracted. It loses our line of thought, due to which our communication gets affected again. So, while you are communicating, please stay focused on what you are saying. Your thoughts are already organized, you are speaking, and do not get distracted from what you are saying. Do not get distracted from your goal of communication. It is very important. Find a way to get to your audience and explain what they think you said. For example, a lot of times your audience is sitting in front of you, or the person you are talking to is sitting in front of you, you are continuously talking and they are just sitting and looking at you. They haven't understood what you have said. Try and figure that out. When you find out that your audience is actually not able to understand or grasp what you are actually saying, it is very important that you start explaining it to them in their terms. For the same example again, if I am talking to a bunch of lawyers, I can use legal terminology. They will understand what I am saying. However, if I am talking to a bunch of non-lawyers or a group of non-lawyers, they will not be able to understand what I am saying if I use too much of legal terminology. Discuss differences until you hear a satisfactory version of the message you wanted to convey. What do I mean by that? The last part of the process of effective communication is feedback. Feedback in the sense, it's not like a written feedback where you get a questionnaire filled and the person says, okay, this was good and this was not good. That's not the kind of feedback we're talking about when it comes to communication. What we're talking about is when you say something, verify it with your listener, if possible, if it's verbal communication. If it's written communication, ask them for a verification again on what you have said. Okay, it's very important that feedback is attained. If you see a difference of thought process, for example, if you have said one thing and however your receiver has understood it differently, discuss those differences till you all come to common grounds. It's very important for you to understand that if you want your communication to be effective, you'll have to be on the same page and understanding a common ground. Okay, that's when you can be rest assured that your communication has actually gone across effectively. One of the biggest reasons that we don't understand why communication fails is because we have that many barriers when it comes to communication. What exactly do we mean by barriers? The normal definition of a barrier. A communication barrier is anything that hinders communication between two people. It could be as simple as me standing here and talking to you in a foreign language which you would not understand. That is the simplest form or an example of a communication barrier. However, there are a lot of other barriers that we are probably not aware of. I will be taking you through the other communication barriers as of now. One of the biggest barriers is probably ourselves. Focusing on ourselves rather than the other person. I think I'm right all the time. Okay, often we think or we are thinking about our responses rather than focusing on what the other person is saying. Some other factors that cause these defensivenesses, we feel someone is attacking us. Okay, superiority, I am better than you, so I am going to continuously talk and you listen to me. I've put a barrier in front of me. We need to understand these are very important barriers. Barriers to communication are extremely important because a lot of times we don't realize that these barriers exist, especially superiority barrier. I know about everything, hence I am right, you are wrong, keep quiet and listen to me. That is a barrier. That is one of the biggest communication barriers that we see a lot of times, and we don't realize that this is actually a barrier. We're actually not letting the other person talk to me. If I get derogative in my communication to you, automatically you will stop communicating with me. You will listen to what I have to say, however, the two-way process stops. So, it's very important that we realize how we ourselves become barriers in our own communication. A lot of times we think, I don't know enough about the subject, so maybe I should keep quiet. Again, I'm putting a barrier. So, these are all very, very important aspects that we need to keep in mind as to how we become barriers to our own communication, which in turn becomes ineffective. perception. A very, very important part of it is perception. How do I perceive things, because of which that's how I speak. Let's look at this picture that's on screen right now. What do we see here? There are two faces actually in this picture, if we haven't noticed. One is an old lady, the other is a young lady. A lot of us probably have seen the old lady, a lot of us have probably seen the young lady. Let me know which one you have seen. Again, this is only a perception. There is nothing right or wrong about this. So, if you see, if we are looking at this picture, this is a very glaring example in our face of how perception can actually affect our communication. If the two of us are having a conversation and both of us are looking at this picture and I say, she looks pretty old, and you would say, no, she looks very nice. I am like, what's wrong with you? It's like an old lady, why does she look so young and nice? So, you see how communication gets affected? Very important. Suspend perceptions while you communicate. Mental state. A lot of us are very stressed out, it's fine. That affects our emotions. Our mental stress affects our communication very strongly. Okay? People don't see things the same way when they are under stress. What we see and believe at a given moment is influenced by psychological frames of references, beliefs, values, knowledge, experiences and goals. It is very important for us to realize that a lot of times when we are stressed, our communication gets affected. For example, if I had a really bad day, when I come back home and I just yell at whoever is at home, my communication is getting affected. That's how my communication gets affected because of stress, mental stress, or my particular mental state. Other communication barriers are not enough time. I don't have enough time, so I say whatever I want to say really, really quickly. I just want to get over it. I have to go. It's 5 o'clock. End of story. I have to get back, so I don't have enough time. Hence, I rush through my communication. End result, nothing is communicated properly. Everybody doesn't speak the same language. People use words others don't understand. Going back again to the same example, if I'm a lawyer and I'm addressing a group of lawyers, as compared to if I'm a lawyer and I'm addressing a group of non-lawyers. People don't speak up, so others don't know what they are thinking. Please remember, communication is a two-way process. So, if someone is speaking to you and you don't speak back or you don't speak up, what is in your mind to clarify whether you have understood me correctly or not? Okay, how would I know? That is one of the reasons, that is another barrier that comes up in communication. Since nobody has raised a doubt, I think everyone has understood everything. People come from different cultures, people are angry, sad, happy, and this gets in the way of communication. It is very important while you are communicating to try or attempt to leave your emotions out. When I am communicating, if there is a particular topic that I am talking about, that I am very, very passionate about, automatically my emotions show. So, it is very important that you attempt to leave your emotions out while you are talking. People make assumptions, they know what others mean when they really don't. People always think they know more. Very important concept. Please do not assume that you know everything, it is not necessary. If someone is telling something back, listen to them. If they are incorrect, you can correct them. However, you might just as well learn something new. People are not ready to listen to others' point of view. Emotional barriers. We have already discussed emotional barriers. Getting into the next part, which we call the 4 types of communicators. This is probably a new part that you haven't read earlier. There are 4 different types of communicators. Try and find out what type of communicator are you. If we look at the slide, the 4 types of communicators are A, action, an action oriented person, 2, a process oriented person, 3, a people oriented person, or 4, an idea driven person. Now, an action person, if you're communicating with an action person, you need to understand that they always want, their objective is always results. What are we going to achieve? How are we doing it? Let's do it fast. That's how you communicate with an action oriented person. The second style, however, is process driven person. Now, a process driven person always talks in terms of how are things going to be done, strategies, organization, facts and figures. A people driven person always talks in terms of relationships, teamwork, how will it affect the other person. He is a very communication driven person. The fourth style is an idea person. An idea person always talks about concepts, theories, innovation and things like that. So, you have to try and figure out what style are you generally, what style do you follow. Try and adjust your style of communication based on your audience. We had spoken about it earlier. Try and know 10 essential characteristics of an effective communicator. The first one is know your audience. While getting to know your audience, try and figure out what exactly are they looking for. Hence, alter your communication. Are they looking at action? What is the end result of it? Are they looking at a particular process? Frame your communication in terms of a process, a strategy. Are they a very people driven person? So, you give them ideas of how you can handle the people. Are they a very idea driven person? Hence, you talk to them in terms of concepts and ideas and theories and innovation.